Hello everyone. Before we start, don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment with where you from and what time it is. That way, YouTube will keep pulling you stories like this. Now, let the shadows take over. I used to think cheap roadside motels were just dirty, not dangerous. A place to crash when you're too tired to keep driving. I was wrong. There's a motel off Route 64 in Oklahoma that still haunts me. It's not the stained carpets or flickering neon sign that keeps me up at night. It's the man who wouldn't let me leave Room 6 alive. I'd been driving for nearly 15 hours that day, trying to outrun a messy breakup back in Nashville. My car was packed with everything I owned, my phone buzzing every hour with messages I couldn't bring myself to read. By the time I saw the Sunset Inn vacancy sign, I was dead on my feet. The motel looked like it hadn't been updated since the 70s. Peeling yellow paint, a single row of rooms, and a vending machine that hummed like it was dying. Only one other car sat in the gravel lot, a rusted blue Chevy van with tinted windows. Inside the office, a balding man named Carl sat behind the counter watching static-filled TV. When I asked for a room, he hesitated, glancing toward the window. "You sure you want 6?" he asked. His voice was low, hoarse, almost like he hoped I'd say no. I frowned. "What's wrong with 6?" Carl's fingers tapped on the counter. "Closest to the road. Gets noisy. Most folks take 5 or 7. I glanced outside. 5 and 7 had busted blinds and flickering lights. 6 looked, well, less terrible. "6 is fine," I said. Carl didn't argue. He just slid me a key attached to a cracked plastic tag with the number barely visible. As I turned to leave, I swear I heard him mutter under his breath. But when I looked back, he was glued to his TV. Walking to room 6, my headlights caught something in the drawn curtains, a silhouette. Someone was standing in the window of my room. My chest tightened, but when I reached the door, the shadow was gone. I told myself it was a trick of the light and unlocked the door. The smell hit first. Musty, damp, like the air had been trapped for years. The room had a sagging bed, bolted down furniture, and stains on the carpet that looked suspiciously like old blood. Deep gouges marked the doorframe as if someone had tried to claw their way out. I felt a shiver crawl up my neck, but I was too exhausted to leave. I locked the door, threw my bag on the chair, and tried to relax. But at 12:27 a.m., footsteps crunched outside. They stopped directly in front of my door. Knock. 3 slow, deliberate knocks. "Yeah?" I called out, voice shaky. No answer. I crept to the peephole, breath caught in my throat. Through the scratched glass, I saw a man. Average build, dark hoodie, standing still, head tilted toward the door. "What do you want?" I asked. Silence. Then, without a word, he walked toward the blue van and disappeared inside. I told myself it was a drunk guest, tried to sleep. But at 1:44 a.m., a faint tapping started on my window. Tap, 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 like fingernails dragging slowly across the glass. I whispered to myself, "It's wind, just wind." But deep down I knew better. I pulled the curtain open just a crack and froze. The man from before was inches from the glass, face pale under the buzzing light. He wasn't wearing a mask, but his grin stretched unnaturally wide. His finger tapped the glass in a slow, mocking rhythm. "Get the hell out of here," I yelled, voice cracking. He didn't move, didn't blink. I ran to the door and yanked it open, ready to scream. The lot was empty. No man, no footsteps. I slammed the door, double-locked it, shoved the chair under the handle, and sat on the bed shaking. My mind screamed at me to leave, but exhaustion pinned me down. Then around 2:30, I heard it. The door handle jiggling. Softly at first, then violently. Someone was trying to get in. I grabbed my phone, dialing 911 with trembling fingers. Before I hit call, a whisper drifted through the thin door, low and raspy. "Wrong room, sweetheart." I stumbled backward, heart pounding so hard it hurt. Whoever it was, they knew I was inside. The jiggling stopped. Silence followed. Minutes felt like hours before I dared to peek through the peephole again. Nothing. Desperate for safety, I ran to the office barefoot, clutching my phone. The night air was heavy still. When I reached the door, the lights were off. The bell above the frame jingled softly as I stepped inside. "Carl?" I called out. No answer. The TV was off. The chair behind the counter empty. A single mug sat on the desk, steam curling from it as if Carl had just been there. On the counter lay another key for room 6. But this one had fresh, wet blood smeared across the tag. My stomach turned to ice. I backed out slowly, eyes scanning the lot. The blue van was gone. My room's curtains fluttered as if someone had just walked past. I bolted back to my car, fumbling with the keys. As I threw it into reverse, I saw movement in my rearview mirror. The man in the hoodie stood by my motel door holding my bag, the bag I'd left inside. He slowly unzipped it, pulling out my clothes, my phone charger, and then my wallet. He looked up at me, that same unnerving grin, and waved before dropping it all on the ground. I slammed the gas and tore out of the lot, gravel spraying behind me. My hands shook so badly I could barely hold the wheel. A mile down the road, I saw it. The blue van parked on the shoulder. The man leaned against it casually, like he'd been waiting. As I sped past, he held up something in his hand. My motel room key. Room 6. I've done plenty of solo road trips, but nothing prepared me for the horrors of that Maine coastline motel. When I tell people about it now, they think it's just another ghost story. I wish it was. I wish what happened could be explained away as folklore or my imagination. But every detail is burned into my memory. The smell of salt and mildew, the sound of sobbing through paper-thin walls, and that final night when I learned the truth about room 3. It was late October when I decided to take a week-long drive up the East Coast. I was a college student back then, needing a break after midterms. Maine had always seemed peaceful in the pictures I'd seen. Rocky beaches, lighthouses, little fishing towns where time slowed down. My plan was simple: drive during the day, stop at roadside motels, and just breathe for the first time in months. I was halfway through my trip when a storm rolled in. Dark clouds swallowed the horizon as I drove along Route 1. Rain hammered the windshield, and strong gusts made my little Corolla shake like a tin can. With visibility getting worse, I decided to stop early for the night. The nearest motel was a weathered 2-story building called Cliffside Inn. Its neon vacancy sign flickered faintly against the raging wind. The parking lot was empty, except for one old pickup truck near the office. I dashed through the rain and stepped inside, dripping onto faded linoleum tiles. A man behind the counter, thin, mid-40s with a salt and pepper beard, looked up from his newspaper. His name tag read, Arthur. "Bad night to be driving," he said, voice low and raspy. "Yeah," I replied, catching my breath. "Just need a room for one night." He flipped through a worn ledger and handed me a brass key attached to a faded red tag. "Room 4. Just you?" "Yeah," I said. Arthur nodded. "You'll be next to 3, but don't worry, she doesn't bother anyone." I hesitated. "She?" "Older guest," he said casually. "Keeps to herself." I thanked him, grabbed my bag, and headed out into the rain. The motel was shaped like an L, with rooms along a balcony overlooking the crashing waves below. Room 4 was at the far end, its paint peeling, the door swollen from the salty air. I unlocked it and stepped inside. The room was exactly what you'd expect from a seaside motel: cheap floral bedspread, buzzing fluorescent light, the faint smell of dampness that clung to the curtains. But it was clean enough, and after a long day on the road, that was all I needed. After a quick shower, I climbed into bed and listened to the storm outside. Waves crashed against the cliffs, wind howled through cracks in the old window frame, and thunder rumbled far off. I was just drifting toward sleep when I heard it. Sobbing. Soft, muffled crying coming from the wall beside my bed, the wall that connected my room to room 3. I sat up, heart beating faster. It wasn't the wind or the storm. It was unmistakably a woman's sobs, broken and shaky, like someone crying quietly into a pillow. I waited, thinking it would stop. It didn't. I got up and pressed my ear to the thin wall. The crying grew clearer. A voice, frail, trembling, muttered something I couldn't make out, followed by another long, aching sob. I felt a pang of sadness more than fear. Whoever she was, she sounded utterly heartbroken. I thought about knocking on her door, asking if she was okay, but it felt intrusive. Maybe she was grieving something private. Eventually, exhaustion pulled me back into bed, and I forced myself to sleep. The next morning, sunlight poured through the curtains. The storm had passed, leaving the air heavy and fresh with salt spray. I went down to the small diner next to the office for breakfast. Arthur was there sipping coffee in a corner booth. I approached him. "Hey, I heard someone crying last night. In room 3. Is she okay?" Arthur froze for a second, then shrugged. "She's quiet. Keeps to herself. I wouldn't bother her." "Does she need help?" I pressed. Arthur's gaze hardened slightly. Best to let her be. Something about his tone made me drop it. I spent the day exploring the rocky shoreline, snapping pictures of lighthouses and buying souvenirs from tiny gift shops. By evening, I'd almost forgotten about the crying, but that night it came again. Around 11 p.m., as I lay reading in bed, the sobbing started. This time it was louder, closer, as if the woman were sitting directly on the other side of the wall. Between sobs, I heard faint, incoherent whispers. My skin prickled with unease. I finally decided to check on her. I slipped on my shoes and stepped outside. The hallway was empty, the salty breeze chilling my damp hair. I walked to room 3 and knocked softly. "Hello? Are you okay?" I asked. No answer. I knocked again, louder this time. "Ma'am? I just want to make sure you're all right." From inside, the sobbing stopped abruptly. Silence pressed against the door. Then, so faintly I almost missed it, a raspy voice whispered, "Don't open it." I stepped back, heart pounding. Before I could respond, footsteps echoed down the balcony. Arthur emerged from the stairwell frowning. "What are you doing?" He barked quietly. I heard her crying," I stammered. "She told me not to open it." Arthur's face tightened. He stepped between me and the door. "Go back to your room now, she doesn't like visitors." Confused and unsettled, I obeyed. But that night, I barely slept. The following day, I couldn't shake it. Curiosity gnawed at me. I watched room 3 from my window all morning. No one came or went. Curtains stayed shut. It looked completely unoccupied. When I asked the diner waitress about it, she went pale. "Don't talk about room 3, she said, voice trembling. She hurried away before I could ask more. That evening, as I packed to leave early the next morning, the crying started again. Only this time it wasn't just sobbing. Through the wall, I heard the frail voice whispering words that chilled me to the bone. "He's still here, watching me, waiting." I froze, clutching my phone. The voice grew louder, panicked. "He never left the room. Don't open the door. You please don't open." Then came laughter, high-pitched, distorted laughter that didn't sound like the same woman. It echoed through the wall, filling my room like a wave of madness. I ran outside, heart hammering. Rain had started again, wind whipping through the balcony. I pounded on room 3's door. "Ma'am, who's in there with you? Do you need help?" The laughter stopped instantly. Silence. Then, ever so slowly, I heard scraping, like furniture being dragged across the floor inside room 3. The sound moved toward the wall connecting to my room, stopping right where my bed sat on the other side. I backed away, terrified. That's when I noticed something I hadn't before. A thin, almost invisible seam along the far wall of my room. I pulled back my bed, revealing a hidden connecting door between rooms 3 and 4, painted over long ago but not sealed. Its old brass handle gleamed faintly in the lamplight. As I stared, breath caught in my throat. The handle turned slowly from the other side. I stumbled back, slamming into the nightstand. The handle clicked. The door creaked open a hair, revealing utter darkness beyond. The sobbing started again, louder than ever, mixed with wet, guttural breathing. I bolted from the room, sprinting down the balcony to the office. Arthur stood behind the counter, pale and sweating as if he knew exactly what had happened. "What the hell is in room 3?" I demanded. He looked at me with haunted eyes and finally whispered, "No one's checked into 3 for 15 years. Not since..." He trailed off, swallowing hard. "Since what?" I pressed. Arthur's gaze shifted to the rain outside. "Since the night the old woman slit her husband's throat and hung herself by that connecting door. Police boarded it up, but she never left." I wanted to scream at him for not warning me, but something made me stop. From down the hallway, room 3's door swung open on its own with a deafening creak. Arthur's face drained of color. "Get in your car. Don't stop driving." I didn't need to be told twice. I grabbed my bag and keys, heart hammering. As I ran past room 3, I made the mistake of looking inside. Through the dim light of a swaying bulb, I saw her, a frail, gray-haired woman standing in the corner, head bent at an unnatural angle, rope marks still dark around her neck. Her sunken eyes locked on me, and she smiled. That twisted, chilling smile followed me as I bolted down the stairs and out into the storm. I drove all night, hands shaking on the wheel, unable to erase that face from my mind. The next morning, far from Cliffside Inn, I stopped at a gas station bathroom. As I splashed water on my face, something caught my eye. On the mirror, written in dripping letters I swear hadn't been there before, were 4 words: "Room 3 is yours." The Arizona desert is one of those places that feels endless when you're driving alone at night. It swallows your headlights, your sense of time, and eventually your sanity. I'd been on Route 66 for almost 13 hours that day, running on nothing but gas station coffee and a stale bag of chips. My plan was simple: make it to Kingman before midnight, find a budget motel and crash hard. But like every plan on a long-haul drive, it didn't go that way. Instead, I ended up at the Desert Palms Motel, and that night, something reached out from decades past and nearly didn't let me leave alive. It was close to 10 when I saw the sign. Faded neon tubes flickered the word "vacancy" like a dying heartbeat. The building itself looked more like an abandoned roadside diner than a functioning motel. Stucco walls cracked from decades of heat, a broken pool fence bending into itself, and a gravel lot that hadn't seen fresh pavement since Eisenhower was president. Only one car sat in the lot, a rusted sedan with flat tires, weeds creeping up around its bumper. I debated pushing on another hour, but my eyelids were getting dangerously heavy. At this point in a road trip, exhaustion doesn't just whisper, it screams. I pulled in, parked near the office, and stepped out into the still, dry night. The air smelled of dust and faint motor oil, and there wasn't a sound beyond my own boots crunching on gravel. Inside the office, it smelled like time had stopped 20 years ago. Dust clung to the yellowed blinds, a ceiling fan ticked like a slow metronome, and the only light came from a flickering desk lamp. Behind the counter sat a heavy-set woman in a faded floral blouse, cigarette dangling from her lips, staring blankly at a soap opera on a static-filled TV. Her hair was teased high like she'd walked out of the 80s and never looked back. I cleared my throat and asked for a room. Without looking up, she rasped in a smoker's voice, "Cash or card?" "Card," I replied. She slid a battered clipboard toward me. I scribbled my name, handed over the card, and she processed it with an ancient machine that squealed as it printed. She slid me a brass key attached to a brittle red plastic tag labeled Room 12. As I turned to leave, she muttered, "Phone don't work. Don't bother calling." I nodded but paused for a second, glancing back. The way she said it wasn't casual. It sounded like a warning, like she'd said it too many times before. But exhaustion bulldozed through my nerves. and I let it go. Room 12 was at the far end of a single row of units. The windows were clouded with grime, curtains drooping like they hadn't been washed in years. The brass number on the door hung crooked, one screw barely holding it in place. When I stepped inside, the smell of stale air and desert dust hit me. The carpet had worn bare patches, the wallpaper peeled near the corners, and the bedspread was faded from sun and time. On the nightstand sat a rotary phone, cord frayed, dust covering its receiver. After locking the door and double-checking the window latches, I stripped down, took a quick shower, and fell into bed, fully intending to sleep like the dead. Outside, the desert was completely silent. Not a single cricket, not a distant coyote howl. Just silence pressing in from every direction. Around 1 a.m., that silence shattered. The room's phone rang. The mechanical bell pierced the stillness, jolting me upright. My heart slammed against my ribs as I stared at the phone in disbelief. The clerk had said it didn't work, and from the look of the cord, it hadn't in years. Yet the bell rang again, shrill and insistent. I hesitated, then picked it up. Hello? For a long moment, only static hissed through the line. Then faintly, a woman's voice whispered, trembling and desperate, "Please, help me." I sat up straighter, adrenaline wiping away every trace of sleep. "Who is this? Are you okay?" Her breath came in quick, shallow gasps. "He's coming back. I can't hide anymore." The hair on my arms rose. "Where are you? Do you need me to call someone?" A small, broken sob crackled through the static. "Room 12. Don't open the door." Before I could respond, the line clicked and went dead. I lowered the receiver slowly, staring at it like it might bite me. It had to be a prank, some leftover wiring connecting rooms. Maybe another guest had picked up their phone and crossed the line. But the motel lot had been empty when I arrived. I tried to convince myself it was nothing, lay back down, and closed my eyes. My heart refused to slow. At 1:32 a.m., the phone shrieked again. This time I snatched it up immediately. "Listen, whoever this is." She cut me off, voice raw with terror. "He's outside. Don't let him in. Please." I spun toward the door, pulse spiking, and lunged to check the deadbolt and chain. Everything was locked. I tiptoed to the window and peeled back the curtain just an inch. The parking lot stretched empty under the buzzing security light. No movement, no sound. Then, faintly, I heard something through the phone. A low, grating laugh that made my skin crawl. The woman's voice dropped to a whisper, nearly inaudible over static. "You're already dead." The line clicked again. I set the receiver down, my hands shaking. Sweat dampened my shirt despite the cool night air. I decided I wasn't waiting for whatever this was to escalate. I stuffed my clothes into my bag and slung it over my shoulder, heart pounding in my ears. When I swung open the door to leave, the world froze. Across the lot, under the sputtering light, stood a man. He was tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in a filthy white t-shirt and jeans darkened with stains. His face was shadowed, but I could see the faint glint of something metallic in his hand, a brass motel key dangling from a red tag. He didn't move, didn't speak, just watched me. "Hey," I called out, trying to sound braver than I felt. He didn't react. I stepped back, slammed the door, and threw the deadbolt. My breathing turned ragged. I wanted to call 911, but my phone showed no service. The motel's location might as well have been on another planet. The phone rang again, loud and shrill. I hesitated only a second before grabbing it. "Who are you?" I shouted. The woman's voice came through in sobs. "Don't open it. He's all